And we are live all over Facebook and Instagram. How are you doing, Josh?
Yes, I am doing well, Pam. Thanks for having me on.
All right, my first question out of the gate before I even introduce you is you have what appears to be a down jacket on and you are in Key West. I'm not computing. Can you explain?
It is a ridiculous 64 degrees here. It
Ah,
is an incredibly cold. And for here, I mean, because I wanted to kind of look good for the show, I took the beanie off and everything. But I walk around with this. I've got sweatpants on and wool socks. That is how thin my blood has become.
now you have sailed the Atlantic Ocean, correct?
Right.
Just putting this all together in my head.
It's all relative. It's all relative. I tell you, yeah, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, lake effect snow. It's just freezing cold all the time.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
that is
But it's
so
just
funny.
this
You've
place is
adapted.
this place is having an effect on me,
You have adapted. Okay, I need to introduce you. I'm sorry, I just got so distracted by that jacket. I had to chat about it. But folks, this is my friend Josh Koerpel, and he is the co-founder and owner of Firebuilders.io software, and he also hosts, and this is how I met him, a daily podcast and Facebook Live called Firebuilders Live. And I met Josh through I don't even remember. I think maybe Mike Roderick's group or Chris Winfield and Jen Gottlieb's group, or
Yeah,
maybe both.
one of those two.
And he had put out the call for folks who could provide some actionable tips to help people kind of move forward and start new habits around any area. And we had a fantastic conversation. And I just loved him. And he also made a referral for me on the spot to somebody who's now a very happy client. So I love this guy. He's amazing. He's creative. He's interesting. Like he is one of those guys. I will admit, Josh, I stalked your profile because it just kept getting more interesting as I went through it. The stuff you've done in your very short life has been incredible. So I wanted to bring Josh on for a couple reasons. He has been studying and focused on accountability for I don't know how long, Josh.
Oh man, I mean the methods and stuff ever since I was 16.
Yeah. Okay. So, and his tips, his ideas, his thoughts, his hacks around accountability are amazing. And I personally have just purchased Firebuilder IO to use not just with my clients, but also with my team because it's such a cool thing. And I'm going to I'm going to ask you to talk about it. I know you didn't want to come on here and talk about it, but before we wrap up, I want you to talk about this software because it's really cool.
Okay,
Um,
done.
but in the meantime, just give us a little background on you, how you got to this point in entrepreneurship and kind of what your big focus is right now. And folks, get ready because this is just always filled with pointers.
Well, it is so good. It's so good to be here. So thanks for taking the time to have me on. I really appreciate that, number one. And for that introduction, I am humbled. I'm humbled. I just turned 40 though, so I'm not that young
I
anymore.
would not have guessed, except for how much you've packed into your life.
Yeah. I tell you, there's just a lot. There's a lot to see out there, and to be honest, like, how are you ever going to know where you fit into the world if you don't go explore, most of it? So ever since I was 16, my parents shipped me off to Chile, and I lived as an exchange student for a year with a host family down there and went to school, and they just put me into that whole thing. And that kind of kicked off my love of traveling and it really, like, honestly, it teaches you a lot about yourself, how you handle challenges. I learned a lot that
Was it
year
like full immersion, basically?
oh yeah. This wasn't, I mean, nowadays in college and stuff, they go, oh yeah, go study abroad, in Spain. And it's this, and I know, cause I did this, it's this hand-holdy, oh yeah, we'll put you into a Spanish speaking school, but the whole class will be English speaking with English speaking teachers.
Okay.
And there was nothing like that in Chile. You fly in, hopefully your host family is waiting for you, which fortunately mine was. And then they just go, all right, see you in a year. Adios.
It was a full year.
Full year. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
How cool. Were you excited about that at 16 or were you scared or were you both?
Both,
Yeah.
definitely both. On one hand, it was really exciting. On the other hand, it's like a 16-year-old, you're just you've got your entire friends unit, and it was real emotional. I remember actually it was super emotional. Like all my friends, everybody was like crying. My mom is crying. My dad's like hugging me. My sister's like bawling. And I got onto the plane, and it was, I'm trying to remember how long. I think it was probably like a 7 or 8 hour flight or something.
Yeah.
And I got down there. My host family picked me up. They took me back, and I just slept for 36 hours. It was the whole experience, the transition was exhausting, and I just fell asleep and woke up like a day and a half later. But it was fantastic. I didn't know really any Spanish at all. And so you have to learn. And Chilean Spanish is a little difficult. It was real slangy, and they speak very quickly. So it's not a super clear dialect of Spanish, but you learn, you get through it. And that kicked off everything for me, that one experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And then as you went through all the different things that you did, and I know one of them was sail the Atlantic. That's the one that intrigued me the most. And it didn't look to be a big boat that you were on. Certainly wasn't an ocean liner by any stretch.
No, 150 foot,
wow.
2-masted wooden schooner.
Right. What is the scariest thing that happened to you on that trip?
Well, actually, so a couple of things, but one in particular, probably the scariest thing that has happened to me out at sea, was we dismasted the boat. So, which essentially means that if you Google a picture of the Pride of Baltimore 2, you'll see this is a big, majestic, huge sails. It looks like a big pirate ship. And 80 miles off the coast of France, a piece of our rigging failed, and it led to a catastrophic dismasting, meaning the masts cracked and fell down on top of us.
Whoa.
And there were 16 people on board. No one got hurt, but that was intense. And luckily it happened in the afternoon, so it wasn't in the middle of the night. But that happened, and then we managed to get the boat into France in a little town called Saint-Nazaire, and I learned how to speak French, and I lived there for months as we rebuilt the boat.
Wow! So it ended up being a little bit longer than you anticipated it being.
Yeah,
to say the least.
Yeah. We had spent the entire summer like sailing through the North and Baltic seas. So we just got the crap kicked out of us all summer long. And we were on our way into the Mediterranean through the Straits of Gibraltar, around the Iberian Peninsula.
The easy part.
Yeah. And then this happened. So we never made it.
Wow. All right. So this question probably has a bunch of answers, but what was the most surprising thing you came away with from, like, what was the coolest big surprise that you came away with?
Well, I would say what I always default to, I didn't really realize it until after the tall ship stuff. But the situation that you're put in is that you're living with like 12 other people in a really small space in a high stress situation. And you really learn how to not only work together, but to live together simultaneously. And, in my 20s, like, man, I thought that was just normal. But then you start to get, I got an engineering job, and I was going to the office every single day. And whenever you have conflicts at work, you just deal with them until 5 o'clock, and then you can go home and forget about them. And on the ship, you can't do that. You really have to work stuff out. And we're not talking like knife fight work stuff out, but you work through a lot of that stuff. And that was the most surprising thing for me, as far as a lesson is learned from tall ships, is how to communicate with people and work things out so that you can move past it and progress instead of just having it kind of
transparently instead of passive aggressively and all those other things that we do to avoid actually dealing with what could be an issue at hand. How cool.
Yeah.
Right, so you wandered back to the States and went to work in a corporate engineering job?
Well, I came back from that trip, the sailing across the Atlantic part. I worked on boats a couple of more years. I got my captain's license, and then I was the captain of these boats, two in particular. I was the captain of the Liberty schooner, which is this 80-foot schooner here in Key West, actually.
Oh, cool.
And then the relief captain for just a short amount of time, but for the Dennis Sullivan, which is a much bigger boat, up in the Great Lakes out of Milwaukee.
Wow.
So I did that and then quit everything and sold a lot of stuff. And my girlfriend at the time and I went and moved and just flew to India and did a big motorcycle trip. And then from there, I learned about this engineering program at Boston University. And that started that whole chunk of my life, the engineering portion of it.
Wow. So that's a lot, I'm guessing, of where you get into software builds and really thinking about how processes work and accountability as a system. Is that is that where it all derived from?
A lot of it was reinforced by those experiences. Like the program that I was in was called LEAP, Late Entry Accelerated Program. Boston University is really the only school in the country that offers it. And it was incredibly competitive, but also very, very, like, when they say accelerated, they mean accelerated. Like you are taking all of the engineering courses that you would in a traditional undergrad, like school 4 years,
program.
right? In like 2. And so
Wow.
you're combining them. And if you don't get over, I think it was at the time, like a 3-4, like
Wow.
they just kick you out. So it is super competitive. And the accountability thing for me, it really came down to being able to focus and experiment with the different ways that I learned. And I found that a couple of methods that I used to keep track of all of the, to not just passively take in the information, but compute it and work it through in my mind and make sure that I really understood it, so that I could take these tests. And I could tell you, actually, I've never said this. I don't ever said this on like a podcast or anything, but here was my trick. The first couple of times that I took tests, like in calculus 2 and physics and all of that stuff, right? I was freaking out, this was super important. And I don't know where it started, but I flipped the script on myself. And instead of dreading these tests, I told myself a different story. And I told myself this like every single day. I said, look, you need to look forward to the tests, Josh, because there are only maybe 2 or 3 times during the semester that you are given the opportunity to really prove that you know what the fuck you're talking about. And once I started doing that and getting comfortable with that notion, all of that fear went out the window, and I just crushed everything from that point forward.
So the challenge of it was actually encouraging to you as opposed to generating more fear. Is basically, hey, you get to really knock their socks off right now.
Exactly. Like, take advantage of it because you only get a few chances to do this. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Wow. So to me, what's really neat about who you are and kind of how you operate in this world is that you're constantly thinking about accountability. And I think all of us, at least I know, I can't speak for everybody. I can speak for myself. My biggest issue is driving through the things I actually need to do to get the bigger goal done. And there are all sorts of reasons, excuses, whatever you want to call them, for not actually taking the action. So, like, when you get stuck, and I'm sure you still get stuck too. What's your go-to when you know you've got a bigger goal in mind, and for whatever reason you're just not taking the steps to get there?
Well, sometimes, at least recently, my go-to has just been to hop on the motorcycle and take a ride around, and do something that that got my mind off of it. Because normally for me, that's an indication that something's building up, right? And I need to wrap my head around it, kind of thing, kind of reset myself.
Yep.
And so that definitely helps. But honestly, I know that this is kind of a cheat, but so for everybody listening, like, I lived on a sailboat for the last number of years, and in that environment, something that is constantly moving, it's constantly dynamic, right? The boat's always rocking. There's always something going wrong. You have to pay attention. It never allowed you to get complacent, right?
Hmm.
So you never really feel like you get comfortable. And I know that it's not like the best answer, but it really does keep
Actually,
you
it
on your
kind of
toes.
is, because what you're talking about is that you were in an environment that forced you to be always in motion. So you didn't have any option but to adapt. And if we think about it, we're really in that same environment, right? The boat's not rocking, but change is certainly happening all around. I mean, you could think about the fact that the Earth is spinning and whirling around the sun at ridiculous rates of speed. I mean, we are always moving and things are always moving around us. And the difference is kind of, it's not a life and death choice for us, whereas for you it was a life and death choice, but it is a choice.
Yeah.
And if we think in every moment, I've got the choice to be complacent or to take the next step I know I need to take, it's it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You're going to stall if you don't take the step. And
Yep.
it's just, maybe this case you don't die, but your dream or your whatever you're working towards does or slows down a little bit. I really kind of like that concept.
Well, I can tell you that if you press pause, right, and just kind of step back a little bit and say, no, let me hesitate for a second, and think this through. To me, a lot of that means that you're sort of moving backwards, right? It's not
Yeah,
like you're just treading water. Like you're sinking a little bit slowly.
I like
Uh,
that.
and there's actually like another thing that I do that you might find interesting. And this is, some people view this as more pessimistic. I don't. I think this actually provides a ton of perspective. Because for me, with all the traveling and stuff, the thing also that keeps me going is having that sense of perspective, right? when I'm avoiding something, right? Either I'm nervous about it, or I'm a little apprehensive, or I just straight up don't want to do it. Having a worldly perspective and knowing that there have been situations like that I'm in, or I have been in, that other people would wish that they were in,
Ah,
that really helps me put things into perspective. But there's this video, and I was just talking about this with somebody, like this video that zooms you out into the very, very edges of the known universe as seen through radio telescopes, right?
yep.
And if you just watch this YouTube video, it puts your problems into
You know,
perspective.
I know the one you're talking about, and it starts with actually an atom inside the human,
Yeah, and it goes all the way out.
all the way out to the edge of the universe, theoretically. And
Yep.
I remember watching that over, and I'm going to put that link in the comments because that really is a cool video. And you reminded me of something. When I used to work in corporate, I'd have more days when I worked in corporate where I was just, I knew it was coming. I knew I didn't really want to be in corporate anymore. I just didn't know I knew that yet, towards the end of that career. And so there'd be more days where I felt uncomfortable than I felt comfortable because I knew what I was migrating to. I
Yeah.
knew I was going to jump and be an entrepreneur, and I had no idea how to do it. And so there was discomfort. But what I did was I put the feed from the space station on, so that I was constantly looking at the view of Earth from the space station. And that gave me that same perspective, which was not quite as dramatic as that video, which I love, and I want to see it again now. But
But no, it's the same idea, right? Exactly the same. Like, did you do it because you say to yourself, how in the world can I get so wrapped up in these small little everyday problems when I know for a fact that in the grand scheme of things, they really mean nothing, you know?
the
Like,
world is spinning,
yeah,
people are living and dying every second or every minute on this thing that I'm looking at. And it's funny, a Facebook user just popped in here, and I can't tell who it is because we're in StreamYard, but we'll see it after the fact, said, if you're in neutral, you're actually going back. He or she loved that comment because it's like driving a stick shift on a hill. You go into neutral,
yeah,
you're going to go backwards. And the thing that I would say is that's not saying don't adjust and pivot. That's saying just don't stop and go, should I really be doing this? Go through and do the thing.
yes,
Do the thing and then decide, then figure out if it was right or not. I worked with one CEO that I was CFO for, Angela Lauria is her name, and she would we had a budget put aside for trial and error. Basically, we called it basically Angela's shit. was the line on the budget.
Okay.
You can name your accounts anything you want to in my finance world. So we had an Angela shit line. We only had to change it when we were given the bank numbers. But other than that, it was a certain amount of money each month. And she could choose to spend that in the month or save it up and spend it in the quarter. And she would do something, try something. And her rule of thumb was, I'm going to try this for 90 days. I'm going to put all in for 90 days as if it is the biggest success in the world. And I'll pivot and I'll adjust, sure, but I'm going to do it for 90 days. At the end of 90 days, I'm going to go, is that a hell yes or a hell no? And it's one or the other. There's no mediocrity. It's hell yes, and here are the things I have to fix to make it go forward, or hell no, that sucked. It was the stupidest idea I ever had. And then it was done. And the cool thing about that was not just personal accountability and not just personal not self-doubting and stalling and stuttering, but it didn't whiplash the organization as a whole. Like, so she led a company and they knew this was what's going to go on. It wasn't like a surprise. No, wasn't flavor of the month. It was, we're doing this thing for 90 as if it's part of the company. At the end of that 90, it'll either stay part of the company or we'll switch to another thing. And I
love it.
I really like that thought of yours about don't pause, you're in neutral.
Yeah. Well, no, it's true. Like, there's nothing wrong with, I mean, just like we were talking about earlier, right? There's so much of the world to see. You got to explore it to see how you fit.
Yeah.
And having the confidence to go out and try new things, even if it's for 90 days, but give it your all.
Yeah.
You know, really give it your all, knowing that, hey, this isn't permanent. Like, I can always reinvent myself and change things if I don't like the way that they're going.
Yeah.
You've got that power. So why the hell not? Give it a shot.
Yeah. And this speaks to so many ways that we get ourselves paralyzed by perfection and just the utter inadequacy of that. Because if you wait for perfect before you actually execute, first of all, chances are good it's just as good it's going to fail as if you didn't, and you've lost all that ground. And life's just too short.
Yeah. You know, it actually, like, you might find this interesting. Honestly, I do care on some levels if I fail and, you know, something doesn't work out. You know, I definitely do. It's not like I've totally desensitized by that, but I care way less than I think most people do. And that actually didn't happen to me in entrepreneurship. I learned that in places like Chile, in places like Spain, because when you're learning a new language, it is the most embarrassing thing ever to be in a situation where you can't do the most basic thing, just communicate with another human. You cannot do that well or at all, right? And you know that either you're going to butcher the vocabulary or you're going to say something stupid or you're going to pronounce it all weird, right? Yeah. It's incredibly, you're vulnerable to that. You do that enough though, you get over that fear. You find out that actually people aren't going to make fun of you because
you live through it.
Yeah, you live through it, and they actually respect the fact that you're trying, and you see it from a way different perspective.
That's a great twist on perspective. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have embarrassing moments. I once asked my Spanish host mom, this woman named Maria Dolores, right? I lived with in Valencia, and she had a really big family, and they were really cool people, but fairly proper. And it was right when I had gotten there, and we had this big almuerzo, right? Which, if you've never been to Spain, like, lunch is the big meal of the day. So everybody shows up, whole family's there, and they all want to know who I am. And I'm like rocking Spanish left and right and stuff, thinking that I'm a rock star. Well, I had asked a couple of days prior to that, I was looking for a bar to play pool, like billiards pool. And somebody was like, yeah, there's a bar, it's called El Punto G, like, go check it out. And so I asked Maria Dolores, there was a lull in the conversation during lunch, and I'm like, hey, Maria Dolores, tú sabes dónde está El Punto G, which basically means, like, do you know where this bar is? Or at least that's what I thought I was saying. Turns out that Punto G, I didn't translate it in my head, but it basically means G-spot. And so in front of her entire family, right, I just asked this 65-year-old woman where her G-spot was, right? That's the kinds of things that happen to you and you live through, and you're just like I don't.
You do live through it.
Yeah,
and it was early. You hadn't even been there very long yet.
Oh yeah, and you know what? That even wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that she then started to explain to me what the G-spot was right, in front of everybody. Oh my God. Like what?
No,
Oh yeah, it was good. It was real good.
that's priceless. I will never forget that story. That is priceless. Oh my God. So tell me, I want to know, because I really do want to know about your software. And like I said, I'm using it. I am loving it. I'm getting ready to roll it out to my team. But talk a little bit about where it came from, what it's all about.
Sure. Well, it's a way that coaches and consultants, kind of like what you're doing, right? Most of the customers have a lot of people that they got to keep track of and want these people to progress. And at the same time, all of their customers, they just want personal attention from you, or whoever the coach is. And so I've created a way that coaches can provide that very personalized daily accountability to everyone simultaneously and do it hands-free, right? It's a constant feedback loop. It essentially kind of takes like you, Pam, and duplicates you into 100 people or
You're
so.
sharing my family stuff.
Right. You got 100 Pams now running around, where each of your people have a Pam, and you can advise them, and you can inspire them, and you can motivate them, and make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing, right? Because how many times have you worked with someone and just said, God, like if you just do what I'm telling you to do, you will get the results that you want, but you're not, because you're just not doing it.
Yep.
So now that's what Firebuilders allows to happen for everybody at once.
With your voice. That's the neat thing.
Yeah. Yep.
And your logo, and it's a complete white label.
Yeah.
For folks who are familiar with that term, but it looks and it sounds and it feels like me everywhere, which, like I said, terrorizes my family.
The sixth sense of humor.
About this, I've thought about it for anybody on this who's watching this either live or on replay, who is a coach, who has a team they're trying to run, who is a CEO pushing responsibility down into an organization or across a set of contractors. I was even thinking, I was talking to my sister the other day about the fact that when you're a minister inside a church, you rely on the work of a number of volunteers who are doing things, who are on, like, whatever you call it, the vestry or the council or whatever it is. And one of the hardest things for a minister, they're a paid role here. Everybody in those other roles is a volunteer.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're not aware of what they need to do, or they don't realize how quickly and important it is that the deadlines are. And so, especially at, this is not to go nuts here, but the price point's really good on this product, such that a not-for-profit or a church or a whatever could easily fit this into the budget and add that kind of accountability to it. So, Chris, if you're watching this or you watch it later, ping me or ping Josh, because this is something I think would be really interesting.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard it used or proposed to be used in a church setting. I think that's a great idea, though.
Yeah.
It's really like, the reason I also think that you are gonna just love it, get it, and people are gonna get kicked out of it, is because the people that you work with love you, Pam. Like it's not what makes it different than any other to-do list and accountability app and stuff out there, is that, there's structure. It helps you keep people focused on just doing one thing a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, that's not to say that you only expect them to do one thing, but it just helps them eliminate the hesitation in the morning to say to themselves, all right, I got like 400 things. Where do I even start? You know where you're going to start. One thing, blam, there it is.
Yep.
But it's the fact that they don't want to let you down. It's coming from you, and you're a person of influence in their life. They respect and admire you. And because of that, you put those two ideas together, and it's just this.
That's a great point. And they've signed on for a reason, right? They know they're doing this for a reason, and that part of that is the work they need to do with themselves. It's not bookkeeping or accounting, but it's, maybe deciding that it's, I'm going to go identify potential bookkeepers or whatever it might be from a finance standpoint. And I've been playing with it. One of the things Josh did when I bought, he says, I set one up for myself right away for my goals for the week. And the place where I most often hesitate is my marketing. It's because every time I start to do it, I just find reasons not to do it. The tech, the this, the that, the other thing. And I started using it, and, like, oddly, right, we are least accountable to ourselves but I didn't want to let Firebuilder Pam down.
Yeah.
Like, as I knew that email was coming tomorrow and it was going to, I didn't know it initially, but after I got into the rhythm, I knew I was going to get an email that said, hey, great job. You did it, in my language, whatever. But also it's really cool enough. I mean, you have some thousands of iterations or something, so that I'm not getting the same email over and over again. It's changing based on my behavior and my reaction to the prompts. It's an AI, really.
Yeah. Yeah. We're playing with the names for what to call it, like everything from an adaptive messaging system, which is a super nerdy, dumb like way to say it, or fluid fire. We were thinking about, like, something like that. But you're absolutely right. Like, the whole idea is that it changes the content, the approach in the email, and the messaging changes based on your behavior. Like, you do or don't do something the day before, you're going to get the right message at the right time. Which just so actually, and something cool, I don't know if we ever talked about this or not, but the whole, when I built this for my mom, right? Like, that was the original.
You told me that. Yep.
Yeah. And I found exactly what you found, right? Is that I could have given my mom a list, a to-do list to put on her phone, some app, and just be like, Mom, I want you to write for half an hour every single day. Like, that's the goal. Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. But the fact that it was coming from somebody that she loved, that she knew, right? She didn't want to let me down. And that was enough. Just like you said, most people won't act on behalf of themselves, but they will act on behalf of somebody else.
Yep.
And that happens to be like Firebuilders Pam,
Yeah,
so,
Firebuilder Pam. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty fierce. And it's funny because I think a lot of fitness apps do this now, but they don't do this, right? So I've done a couple of them, and you get if you're not working with people who are actually doing it manually, you get one of these big ones. Noom, I guess, is one of them. It's not as personalized. It's just not. It's not. I don't know my person and trust them and know that they're telling me what I need to do and those kind of things. This is for coaches who have clients who need to take actions. I mean, that's a great audience for it, but you can continue to think teachers could use it. Colleges could use it. I mean, there are just so many conductors of choirs could use it.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody the other day was telling me how much of a positive influence football coaches have in high school and university settings. And it got me thinking about, that is a fantastic approach, because it really does work best if the accountability and the messaging is coming from somebody that has a cult following, just like people would lay down in traffic for them. Like, this person, I love this person, I will do what they say.
Yep. And coaches, like football coaches and stuff, that's a given.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm actually I'm planning on reaching out. I'm not even sure where to start yet, but I will figure it out.
Well, if anybody knows, let Josh know where he should reach to get this out to college coaches, because that's a really, really good point. And the thing that I would follow up on with this is to say, and just want everybody to know this, like, when I called Josh and said I wanted to get this thing, it was 4 days later. I had it up, running, working, and I had one button to push to quote unquote turn it on. There's no integration. There's no anything that I have to worry about. He sent me an email, said, push this button, and I was up and running, both for me and for anybody else that I wanted to use it for. And that is really big as you start to get to folks who can get themselves confused in tech. So, and it included stuff. I don't know how you did this. I don't want to know. It's magic to me, and I love that. It's like watching somebody crochet. It's just magic. I don't understand it. But it sounds like me. There are a bazillion emails. I have no idea how you got a bazillion emails to sound like me, so that anyone that's going to happen to fall on somebody's desk on a given day is going to be a different message that still sounds like me.
Well, don't get creeped out, but I've been following you for the last couple of years.
I have no idea how you made that happen. And anyway, it is kind of magic, and that is just so cool.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it took a lot of work. This This latest version has only been out for maybe like a month and a half, 2 months, but it's been in the works. It's been built over the last 3 years.
Wow.
2 MVPs where I really spent a lot of time. Technically, all this stuff was feasible, but it wasn't. The question was, how would people respond to the content? Like that's, how does the technology and then the content mix, right? And that's where the majority of the work. And I interviewed everybody, like everybody that went through this, got feedback. We built things into it that really that people wanted, and that they were saying that they were using. And then we cut the things that we, thought were going to work and didn't. And so I'm really glad that you said that, because one, coming from the ship world, like keep it simple, everything is super simple. And so that was definitely one of, people use simple, right? And so a lot of work went into that. But two, I don't know, it really is. There's no reason that software, in my mind anyway, there's no reason that software has to be so straight laced. I feel like you're getting the more personalized and the funnier, the more entertaining things are. If you look at the top 5 people that are using it right now, they are getting, every single day, they are getting open rates between 60 and 80% of all of their people. Wow. I mean, that of course blows open rates of pretty much of every industry out of the water. But then also click-through rates of 20, 30, sometimes even 40%, right?
Yep.
So why do you think that is? Is it because they're so super psyched about accountability? Maybe, right? It's because it's entertaining, and it's
you never know what's going to be in that email each day.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the mix. That's the thing that I feel is the kind of secret sauce, and we've made it happen.
So hard on for so long. Well, that is awesome. Like I said, folks, look, if you want to get in touch with Josh, the easiest way to do it, frankly, is to find him on Facebook and DM him, or you can tag him in this wherever you see it. He's both in my group and on the personal page, so feel free to tag it on either one of those spots with just an at Josh. And if I see that you're not connected, I'll make sure that I tag him on that so that he can find it. But this is really, really, really interesting. So for all those folks in the group who are clients of mine or aren't and are coaches, this is something to check out. I'm telling you, it's very price accessible, and it's really kind of fun, and it adds a real dynamic for your clientele that you might not even have thought of before, especially if you're in a membership type situation, and this thing can just replicate itself over the membership. So I'm so excited, and I can't thank you enough for coming on. I always get so much out of chatting with you. I learned even more about your background. I'm not as good a stalker as I thought I was. But this was just, thanks so much for coming on and doing this. And folks, check out Josh as well on Firebuilders Live every single day. He's got somebody on there who is dropping actionable tips and tricks on every topic. I can't even go through the litany of topics, but think about how many of these have you done so far?
Today was 118.
Yeah, and he's just going at it a day at a time. So that's, the content's in there from before. There's not one. If I don't have time to watch them when I see them come on, I save them and watch them later. I think I probably got 20 piled up though, which is with you hard. But Josh is the epitome of consistency and his own accountability. So I really feel like we've been blessed with you being here to share some of that with us today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I so appreciate that, Pam. Really, I appreciate you as well. Honestly, this whole thing, the opportunity to talk with you here, trying the software, seeing what's happening with your people and how you're using it has just been a blessing for me. And
awesome.
And I'll tell you, just having you on the show and Firebuilders Live, that was awesome.
That was a blast.
That was a blast. That was a blast. And just exactly what you're doing, having these conversations with people. I think one of the biggest things, the consistency part of things, of course, but the opportunity to speak with really interesting folks and let them motivate you on a daily basis, that's another huge part of it for me. You know?
Absolutely. And that's why I love the day. And there's something comforting about the knowing that every day I can pop out there. If I'm having a bad day, I can go see what you did. And another guy who does this really well is Blake, our mutual
Yeah.
friend, Blake Fleischhacker. And, it's knowing that it's going to be there. So that's important work that you guys do, that I know I can see what you can just hear from somebody, especially in these times when we're not able to physically get together and see the rooster live, that you've got. I'm glad he piped in a couple times. I promised it and he did. So
He is here. He is here. I don't know where exactly, but he is floating around here somewhere, and it is 2:51 right now. I would say in about 2 hours, he normally shows up and then he flies up onto the roof of this porch, and that's where he sleeps. So,
that's funny.
Yeah, it's like clockwork. It's like
That's
clockwork.
hysterical.
I'll send you a video.
That's it. That's the other fun reason you can always watch Josh to pick out when the rooster's going to crow, because it's always going to happen in the middle of one of his broadcasts.
Always. I got these. In fact, I like these little stones and stuff. I keep right here by the computer, because every once in a while they get too close and I just got to like toss them away. They figured out the water gun. They stay just far enough away that I can't reach them. So now it's stone. Now it's like little pebbles and stuff.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I love it. That's great. All right, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Josh, I can't thank you enough. This was a blast. We are signing off for now. Whether you're live or on replay, I know you've enjoyed this time with Josh. Let him know, because the more we continue to do this, the better off we all are, and the more we're lifting everybody up. So thanks again, Josh.
Bam. Thank you so much. See you guys.
All right. Take care.